This is a review of our series 101 series on transformation, colon, the ultimate surrender. Transformation, the ultimate surrender. And we have said all along we were taking a look at the vertical axis that leads to God and the horizontal axis, that's what we call the earthly axis. And we travel along this plane from birth to death, and at some point we hit an intersection in our life. It could be a crisis, anything could happen. It could be coming to know or discovering God, and we begin to ascend toward the unknown. And it's at that crossroad that we surrender ourselves. And I call it the ultimate surrender. We surrender ourselves to the ultimate, and the ultimate being God, who operates at the vertical axis. And of course, this gives us a clear understanding of what it takes for us to become a part of God's salvific plan, His plan of salvation. And so, as individuals, we struggle, our little man here, again, on this horizontal plane, and we try to make sense of life until we reach this point where we certainly will reach. But in the process, here we are at earth, at this level, and we know that there's a spiritual level, or heaven, we call it heaven, and we have to ascend into that. But we can't stay there. We descend back, and at this particular point, when we come back, we hope that we are changed. C-H-A-N, changed. And that's what we call the unknown. So, we've given you a series of lessons. Our first lesson, lesson number 001, was lesson number 001, was entitled Ascendance. Into the unknown. And we gave as our text for that lesson 2 Corinthians, the 3rd chapter, 17 through 18. And in that chapter, we pointed out 3 things. 1, we pointed out that when we freely surrender ourselves to God, we receive His Spirit. And we've started our ascension at that level. We get insight into His glory. That's the glory of God. And 3rd, the transformation process begins. At this level, we are ready to move into the ascension that I talked about. This is the vertical axis. This is the horizontal axis. This is chronological time. This is Kairos time. And so, during Kairos time, we begin to move, we come back, and here the transformation or change begins. But it begins when we surrender at the crisis level. We get insight into who God is up here. And then we begin to change at this level. So our first message was about ascending into the unknown, and the unknown being God. The second lesson had to do with the flowering of God's salvation. That was lesson 002, number 002, and it was entitled The Flowering of Salvation. It was in that lesson that we talked about as our text, on this rock, Jesus said to Peter in Matthew's, the 16th chapter, the 19th verse, on this rock, this is our rock, and this is Peter. Jesus said, I build my church. And it was on this rock that the church began to be built. But it was built based on Peter's passion and his love for Christ. And then the second thing that happened was that once we began to build on Peter's passion, we began to discern God's word for ourselves. We've gotten insight into his glory. We began to change, and now we begin to learn and learn his message. And then the third message, 003, number 003, was entitled Powers of It. And this was a big it, I-T. And the powers of it spoke to three things. And the text was Matthew again. But this time it was the 7th chapter and the 7th verse. And it's very familiar to most of us. The powers of it is God, is you asked for it, you seek it, and you knock for it. And that it is God. And by asking, seeking, and knocking, God reveals himself to us. And that's the power of it. And then finally, our last lesson, we talked about 004, number 004. We talked about enjoying a royal workout. And like any other kind of workout, it's something that we do on a regular basis. We said to enjoy a workout, we must learn to live, love, and laugh. These are the three things that would make our life worthwhile and meaningful. But not only that, it would take us to the next level of existence. We'll tell you more about that as we get into lesson